This will be a review on the WWE Hell in a Cell pay-per-view that was on the network on Sunday, October 8, 2017. It was a 7-match event, but including the pre-show, I'll consider that the 8th match. And on the opening match, and it took place in the pre-show, we had Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin versus Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley. And before I get to the match, I have to say, in the past 2 pay-per-views that they've had a good pre-show match. On SummerSlam, they had the New Day versus the Usos, which was an epic match. And on the last pay-per-view, they also had Apollo Crews versus Elias, which was another solid match. And so this is the 3rd pay-per-view in a row where the pre-show, the kickoff match, really was must-see, and it's not skippable material. So I'm not sure if that's planned, if they're letting the workers have a good match, or what's going on, but just keep it up, because I like these kickoff matches that they're doing. So, Chad Gable, unfortunately, I think they put him a step back. And the reason I say that is because when Jason Jordan and him broke up the tag team, Gable was getting a solo push on SmackDown for a couple of weeks as a nice underdog wrestler, fighting some solid matches but losing. And I thought, with the audience behind him, and they were cheering him, that Gable has all this potential to be a solo good wrestler, career-wise, and he's a solid worker. And I think just putting him in a tag team is a step backwards for him, career-wise. Shelton Benjamin, again, they brought him back, which is good, but putting him on a tag team with Benjamin, I just think for him it's a step back also. It's like, I sense they don't know what to do either with Benjamin or Gable. That creative doesn't know what to do with these 2 guys, and they paired them together. And the other team of Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley, first off, Mojo Rawley has what I would say is a sloppy presentation. His visual look, how he looks as a character, it's all wrong. It doesn't gel. It doesn't feel right for the character. He got to get rid of those armbands. That armbands, that haughty type look, it doesn't fit his character on Rawley. And with the tights he wears, I think it would be better if he just wore baggy pants and no armbands. For his character, it would just look more fitting for Mojo Rawley. Zack Ryder got a good look, and with the beard and the youth and the look, that he has definite potential, but WWE never really wanted to get behind him and give him the solo push that he deserved. They never seem to be behind that guy, Zack Ryder, and he's been a good company man, and he doesn't seem to have any screwed up life or get in trouble outside of the wrestling community. So the match here was solid work between both teams, back and forth, and it really heated up towards the end when Shelton Benjamin, Chad Gable did their finisher to Mojo Rawley, but Mojo kicked out. And then right when Zack Ryder and Mojo were going to do their tag team move against Shelton Benjamin, Benjamin slipped out, and then Zack started mouthing off to Mojo, like, what are you doing type stuff. And so they started arguing. Then Benjamin got the upper hand, setting up for their finisher with Gable, and they pinned Zack Ryder. And you didn't really see anything after the match because they cut away pretty quick. But what they're doing is a slow burn between Zack Ryder turning heel, hopefully, against Mojo Rawley. Because a couple of weeks ago, when Zack Ryder didn't want to shake the hands with Benjamin and Gable, when they'd lost previously, and Mojo Rawley shook hands, it was kind of like Zack Ryder, you could sense looking behind him, like over the shoulder, that he's turning heel slowly. I think WWE is doing a good slow build for an eventual fight, and if they fight, probably Zack Ryder is going to beat up Mojo Rawley in some type of Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty type angle, hopefully. And I think just creative when it concerns these 4 characters of Gable, Benjamin, Ryder, and Mojo, I really don't think creative really has them in terms of knowing where to push them, where to take the next step. It seems that they're giving Ryder a push, but this guy has always been pushed up and down the card, and he's never had a solid management behind him. And he should have been a real top star by now. The fans like this character, and he's really going nowhere where he is currently, so turning him heel just might be an improvement he needs. And by that, I mean I'm going to talk about the Usos next, and how it relates to Zack Ryder and his future, because turning heel could finally get him where he needs to be. And on to the next match. Okay, now we're switching to the first official match of the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and it starts actually in the Hell in a Cell, because there were two matches, this match and then the Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens, which would be the last match. So I kind of figured that they would put the Hell in a Cell at the beginning just to divide up time-wise. So that's what they did. The Usos versus the New Day. And the New Day had Xavier Woods and Big E. And Kofi was on the outside of the cage and didn't do much at all. So I must be injured or something going on. And before I start out, the Usos wore red pants instead of their usual black pants look. And it looked pretty good. It changed it up, the visual look that they had. And I think they got more in shape since they've turned heel. And the Xavier Woods and Big E team, surprisingly, Xavier Woods has shown some real solid wrestling skill these past few months. Because you ever thought on the New Day that he was the weak link and he wasn't the good wrestler? It was always Kofi and Big E. But man, the past few months, Xavier Woods has been totally reinvented. Solid worker, just real solid craftsmanship from him. So good going. One thing to mention is the past few months, they've had this Usos versus New Day feud going on, and with two epic matches, just all out, great stuff. But the odd thing is, being the WWE now, and not having enough teams or workers, they have fought far too quickly, far too much the past few months, where it would mean more if they had one epic match, and then a few months later, like 6 months later, had a second epic match, and waiting for another 5 or 6 months to have a third and final epic match. By squeezing them all together, it kind of gets rid of that epic feel and momentum, because fans are getting too used to it. You're getting too used to seeing this type of stuff and the same teams fighting all the time, where just breaking it up would add more drama for their next feud, if you catch what I'm saying there. And in this match, it felt like a 1990s Attitude Era hardcore match, because both teams really worked hard in this match. They had a lot of stiff shots. It opens with a tornado tag, which is pretty unique because you don't see it too much in WWE, a tornado tag where both sides are fighting each other at the same time. No tagging in, no tagging out, just going at it full on. And when I mean they went at it full on, they brought out weapons right from the start. They brought out the kendo sticks. They brought out the steel chairs. They brought out they even used other weapons like a cowbell. Was that a cymbal? The New Day had this, and it's probably going to be a toy. I'll call it out right now. It's probably going to be in a toy or in the next video game. Not the one now, but the next one. But the New Day brought out a rainbow-colored kendo stick. Okay, that's something new that I've not seen before. So wait for it. That will be a toy, definitely. The rainbow-colored kendo stick, which had a good spot in the match as well. Even handcuffs. And the first thing you see is just, okay, you're on the ringside, and then, was it the New Day? Was on the ringside, like Big E and the Usos just slam into him, and they both go flying, and Big E hits the back of the cage. They go flying out, and that happened later again as well. A lot of those spots where the people went flying from the ring, hitting the cage, and both bodies crashing right into that cage. Man, that was some stiff shots, and there was so much action, so many high spots in this match. And honestly, Even though the New Day were the tag team champs, I didn't know which way this would go. It could have either went to New Day, or it could have went to Usos. You know, I really couldn't predict the end of this match, much less how it would go. And that's a good match, because you have no idea which way this feud's going to end. And there was such solid back and forth spots, but a couple of spots that really stood out, and a lot of weapons, which is why I said this felt like a 1990s Attitude Era match. One of the real good spots was the New Day got one of the Usos on the very corner of the cage, and they got a bunch of kendo sticks, like 5 kendo sticks. So, well, picture a guy in the corner between the cage sides, and they put the sticks in between the cage, the spokes of the cage, to trap him in the side corner, where literally the Uso was trapped in the corner with the sticks holding him in, kind of like being in a prison. And so that was a pretty good spot. And a real good spot was the Usos took out handcuffs. They handcuffed Xavier Woods, and they put the arms above his head so that he was hanging from the outside, from the ring post. And so his body was hanging on the outside of the ring by the cuffs with his arms up, and his body vulnerable. So the Usos got the kendo sticks and started hitting him with the kendo sticks. But what's pretty realistic was, instead of just taking it, Xavier Woods still had his legs free, so he would kick up his legs to try to block the shots, which is a real realistic thinking, instead of just taking there, instead of just getting hit. So he was using his legs to kind of go up to try to block some shots, but they kept hitting him with those kendo sticks, and they really got the advantage. And it was just like solid work. There was a lot of kendo stick hits in this match, and it was just, it's had a realistic sort of feel to it. And you know what's kind of interesting is, you've seen it in the past couple of months. Sometimes Big E will just like explode with rage and start suplexing and beating the crap out of everyone. And he did that here as well. I'm not sure if it's a character spot, but I really think it's something WWE should develop more and try to make it known that when this guy explodes, he just goes berserk and he'll just kick the crap out of anyone. If you've noticed it, Big E's done that a bit the past few months, but it's never been called out or mentioned as a spot or something that he does as a character. But it does work. But at the end of the day, the Usos got Xavier Woods, who was handcuffed still, by the way. And Big E, in case I didn't mention it, when he was handcuffed to one of the ring ropes, he eventually broke the cuffs off, so he escaped his handcuffs. But with Xavier Woods, his hands still tied, the Usos hit their double splash and pinned him and became the new tag team champs. Well-earned victory by the Usos, but both teams worked really hard, really solid, and you got to give it up to both teams credit, because they had to be sore and in pain after this match. They really earned their big bucks at the end of this match, because it was an incredible performance and solid workmanship and some of the best stuff that they're doing. And I got to give it also credit to the Usos. I've never liked them when they were faces, when they were the good guys. I never liked it because of their look, their character. It didn't seem to really have any engaging personality behind it, other than them doing just the same old thing every time. And I didn't even like their heel turn in the beginning, because it just didn't seem to have any direction or any character to it. But the Usos, the past few months, have really developed a style, a personality, and a good set of characters that this is literally the best they've ever been in the WWE, what you see now with the Usos. And for the New Day, I think Xavier Woods has been the standout the past few months. He has really upped his game and has made the New Day a better team by being a reliable, solid worker. And all three are now fantastic in what they can do in the ring. And unfortunately, it seems Kofi is a bit injury prone the past few months. He's been injured on and off. And hopefully he could get through these injuries and not get injured big in the future, because his stuff is also good. So solid work by both teams. Well done on both sides. Got to give it up for that. And since I was counting the kickoff match, the tag match, as the first match of this pay-per-view, even though it was the kickoff, and so the second match was the Usos, which was the official opening of this Hell in a Cell pay-per-view event. The third match here is Rusev versus Randy Orton in a match again. And one thing I'd like to say is it seems not to have any real motivational goal or direction because there's no title on the line. There's no title shot in the future on the line. And it's just a battle because at SummerSlam, Randy Orton pinned Rusev in a couple of seconds. 1, 2, 3 real quick. And then when Rusev returned on SmackDown, he pinned Orton real quick. And so this is the feud that led into this. But what's even kind of weirder is Aiden English did not appear at all in this match. And I mention that because the past few weeks, Aiden English, his character, has been interacting with Rusev as sort of his unofficial tag team partner. I mean, he's been real buddies with Rusev, and they've been hanging out. And on SmackDown last week, before the pay-per-view, Orton did a surprise RKO against Aiden English, and then he eventually did the RKO against Rusev. So you would think Aiden English wouldn't be a factor in the match, or that he would be out for revenge, or at least be at ringside or do something. And no, he didn't make an appearance at all in the match. It was a solid match, one-on-one. No weapons, no special gimmicks in this match of Orton versus Rusev. And so they're working back and forth. It was just, I would view it as a TV quality match. Nothing really pay-per-view special in that regard. So they're not fighting for anything on the line. They're just having a match. And I'm not even sure if this feud is over at this point. So there's some solid work, but the end comes pretty uniquely in that Orton is pounding his hands on the mat as Rusev is laying there on the floor trying to set up his finisher, right? So even though he's on the floor, somehow Rusev reverses it and he's going to put on the accolade to Orton. And I thought that little sequence was nice, how we kind of like reversed it so quick and set that up. It's the first time I've seen something like that happen to Orton. So just when he's going to set up the accolade, Orton reverses it and eventually hits a thunderous RKO. And I don't know what it is about Rusev, the way he sells the RKO. He kind of like dives head first, and it's like he dives like head first where it looks like he really hurt himself, where it's like he's landing on his head like almost a DDT as his legs pop up in the air in the back. But when Rusev gets hit with an RKO, it's like the third time I've seen it. Just the way his body reacts to it, it's unique because not many other wrestlers react that way to the RKO to sell it, and it looks devastating. I mean, when he gets hit with it, it looks totally devastating. And after that, he gets pinned again, and the match ends just like that. There's no one to beat up Orton after. You know, Aiden English beating up Orton after would have been a nice bit, but it didn't happen. But Rusev sells that RKO as pure devastation, and you're not getting up after that. It was a nice sequence at the end, how it was all set up that way. And unfortunately, I think Rusev is on the downgrade, people. Ever since his first feud and his first loss, and when he had Lana with him, he was a strong character. But when Lana and him broke up, in terms of their characters, and he doesn't have a manager anymore, Rusev has been hot and cold. He has been injured, and so he's had to have time off for various injuries. And then when he's been back, sometimes he's being pushed as indestructible, and then at other times he's being pushed as a guy who gets pinned quite a bit. And so I've even heard rumors maybe he wants to leave the company. Not sure if it's true or not, but I couldn't blame him in a way. It's like he's so hot and cold, his push. Sometimes he's being pushed up, sometimes he's being pushed down, but there never seems to be any solid backing behind him, any solid workmanship behind him of what creative wants, his character, his direction. And so with this loss, Rusev's character, it does take a back step, I think, of what are they going to do with him. And Orton, I think, is just kind of cruising in terms of he wants to turn heel. That's what the rumor is saying. And it's like another win, but is he in the title picture? Like, where is his character going direction-wise? He's an A-plus player. He's at the top of the game. Maybe it's better that they trade him to Raw. Don't forget at the previous SummerSlam, not this one, but the other one, that Randy Orton got busted open by Brock Lesnar. And that feud never really had a really good payoff or mention again. So at least getting Orton in the title picture with Brock Lesnar would be a good feud and a way to settle it. Because Orton's character really needs to, I think, be traded so he could step up and fight some new competition. I think he's done all he can on SmackDown at this point. On the fourth match of the night, we had a really good triple threat match between AJ Styles, the United States champion, Tye Dillinger, and Baron Corbin. And let's talk about the characters first. AJ Styles, top of his game still. And when you see his performance in this match, his high spot moves, he's just such a solid worker that deserves another world title shot and another world title run. He's been a great company man. He has a good personal life where he's not a screw-up outside of the ring. And you could always rely on this guy to do a solid performance. And another solid workmanship by AJ Styles. Does all his moves, his spots, he does everything right. And so, solid worker. Tye Dillinger, at last, on his entrance, returns with his big, high collar vest. That's something he had on NXT. But when he got moved to the big brands, he's been coming out with his t-shirt a lot. Just like every other wrestler wearing a t-shirt. I thought his uniqueness, his character, his personality got pushed down by wearing a t-shirt. Wearing the vest, looking different, adds more personality to him. And his gimmick is saying 10 with his fingers, like perfect 10. That's his gimmick. So I think having that vest, he should wear it, be different, have more personality. It's a good factor here that he brought it back. We'll see if he keeps it on the TV shows. Baron Corbin has been pretty famous that, unfortunately, his antics outside of the ring, and especially on Twitter, getting in Twitter feuds, has cost him in terms of the company, because he got pushed down on the John Cena feud, and then he lost the Money in the Bank briefcase match. So he's been going hot and cold career-wise, and now he's been pretty cold the past few months. And I think personally with Baron Corbin, I think his maturity level and stuff outside of the ring is going to cost him long-term career-wise if he doesn't act like a professional. And that's one thing you got to give credit for to AJ Styles and guys like The Miz. They don't cause trouble outside of wrestling. They have good social lives. They don't go out of their way to cause trouble and things like that make the company look bad. And Corbin, unfortunately, seems to have not that maturity level to know. Just be cool, Don't be a troublemaker. Just be someone that the company could rely on not to cause trouble. So it's a solid 3-man match between Tye Dillinger, Baron Corbin, AJ Styles. And I should mention that Baron Corbin got new music, new theme music. So when I noticed the new music recently, I thought maybe this is a sign that they're going to push him up, that management has some faith in him again. And so on this solid match, it's a pretty good triple threat match. But you know what's kind of odd, and I noticed this? Tye Dillinger does not hit his finisher, the tiebreaker, at all in this match. AJ Styles does not hit the Styles Clash at all. And Baron Corbin did not hit his finisher, the End of Days, at all in this match. So you didn't see the finishers. Usually in these triple threats, at some point you'll see one guy hit his finisher, then the next guy, and the third guy. That's how it usually goes. And the working was pretty good overall. But at the end of the match, on the back and forth, it concludes when AJ Styles hit the 450 splash on Tye Dillinger, and then Baron Corbin picks up the scraps. He throws, or I should say rather, he kicks AJ Styles out of the ring. Then Baron Corbin gets the pin on Tye Dillinger, even though AJ Styles was the champ. So he pins the guy who is not the champ, and he wins the match, and he wins the belt. And Baron Corbin is the new U.S. champion. I think it's actually a pretty interesting move because I had a feel that Tye Dillinger might have won because he's the new guy on the two brands. He got pushed up from NXT within the past year or so. And he's the one that might have a better future if management gets behind him. But it did a solid work by Tye Dillinger, but he didn't win the belt. Corbin seems to be the new guy that they're going to push, or at least give a chance. Maybe management has forgiven him. And he has the new music, as mentioned. And so we'll see what they do with that. But if you notice it, Baron Corbin now regularly wears a t-shirt. Because, and it's just my guess, he has those ugly chest tattoos. And probably someone in management had to have said, wear a shirt. Those tattoos just look ugly. And they do. It's not good, the tattoos he chose. Doesn't look good at all. So Corbin getting a push, surprised. And I thought he could have been championship material in the future. But I don't know if career-wise he'll ever be a world champion. AJ Styles definitely deserves another championship run. And is Tye Dillinger championship material? Too soon to tell, but I think he's Intercontinental Championship material one day. I'm not sure if he's World Championship material, though. This match is Natalya Neidhart versus Charlotte Flair. It's the fourth match of the pay-per-view, or the fifth one if you want to count the pre-show match. This match was kind of disappointing, to be honest. It was a one-on-one match, no gimmicks. Natalya is the world champ. But here's the thing. The Money in the Bank briefcase is by Carmella. And one day she's going to cash it in, do a cheap shot and win. I thought Natalya would have been a transitional champion, maybe a couple of weeks, and would have lost it by now, and Carmella would be the champ. Carmella has held the Money in the briefcase so long that her character has become uninteresting. She has lost the momentum after winning the case, that she should have cashed it in by now because it's just sort of out there, and it's lost that fan momentum, that fan interest, because it's been so long. She should have cashed it in already. And I thought that would have been a factor here. Maybe they should have had her come out earlier in the match to do announcing. You didn't see Carmella at all. You didn't see her after the match. No presence at all in this event. And so it was just a one-on match between Natalya and Charlotte Flair. It went on for about 10 to 15 minutes. It was an average match. It was a TV quality match. And it ends because Natty is outside the ring. Charlotte hits her incredible moonsault. She likes doing the moonsault. Is really good at it. And instead, Natalya gets a steel chair when they're both outside of the ring, whacks Charlotte, and gets on purpose the DQ. So she loses the match, but she retains the title. So you could clearly tell this is the beginning of the feud between Natalya and Charlotte. It was not the end. It was not a pinfall victory. It was just a transitional match, TV quality, just to lead to a bigger match down the line. It really was what I would say TV quality average match. But the one thing it was missing was it was missing something more. I really thought the Money in the Bank should have either been cashed in by now, or at the very least Carmella should have been there for her presence, just to make things more interesting, to incite stuff, just to be there. Because don't forget, Carmella could fight either Natalya or Charlotte. She really doesn't care as long as she gets that belt. So I just thought there should have been a better presence in that match, or some other factor going in. And hopefully with this Natty Charlotte thing, that they have some type of gimmick match. They have some type of gimmick match in the future. I would like to see, but I also think that the women's division needs more women wrestlers. There's only so many times person A could fight person B and person B could fight person A, that you need more women in the mix, and especially the world title mix, to make it more interesting than seem the same characters fight again. Sasha Banks has held the world titles too long. Alexa Bliss is holding the world titles too many times. Charlotte Flair is holding the world titles too many times. You've got to have longer title runs for the women, and you have to stop having the same characters keep fighting each other all the time, because it lacks the emphasis that it should have. We see a segment back on the Fashion Files of Tyler Breeze and Fandango and their gimmick characters, and even the Ascension, the tag team. And they have a nice, funny skit of what's going on, and the Fashion Files, it's either you kind of like what they're doing, WWE, with them, or you don't like what they're doing. There is no middle ground. You either like the skits or you don't. I find it pretty hilarious that everyone says Fandango, his personality, who he is. Everyone says that Fandango, Curtis, behind the scenes, his personality, that he's a great guy, that he's just a really friendly, really good guy in terms of who he is in real life. And he's really gotten behind any gimmick WWE has given him. At first I thought WWE was pushing him as a strong heel, and then they lost faith in him for quite a few years, but he hung around, and now he seems to have found his thing with Tyler Breeze. This unlikely duo, which started out as heels, have now become faces, and the fans like him. I think their personality, what they've become, is they have become the new Edge and Christian of this era. That's right. They've become the new Edge and Christian in terms of their comedy skits, in terms of their lightheartedness as characters. And so they do this Fashion Files thing, and they put the Ascension in there, and the Ascension seems to have no direction either. But now it seems they're sort of slowly becoming a comedy duo, the Ascension. What they were doing previously was not working on the Ascension, and they're still not anywhere near mid-card status, because they're not. But it seems if they could have this slow turn into being like comedic faces for the company, that the Ascension could possibly have a future. They're not right there yet, in terms, that's what I'm saying. Breeze Dango, between Tyler Breeze, Fandango, they're pretty solid now and reliable, and fans like him. But the Ascension are still not quite have a following with the fans. In other words, if you cut them and fired them right now, nobody would notice or even care. So at least they do this little bit. The skit was pretty good, and it seems they're going to have a next mission for the Fashion Files. We'll find out what it is later, but entertainment. Next match of the review here. It's the World Championship match. Jinder Mahal versus Shinsuke Nakamura. I thought, honestly, this would be the second to last match. Because, you know, Kevin Owens and Shane McMahon are the last match because they have to bring the cage down. I thought the World Championship match should at least be the match right before the end. But no, it's the sixth match, because you have the Bobby Roode match after, which I'll get to. So, Jinder Mahal versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Nakamura comes out first. If you noticed, one thing they do with him and Bobby Roode is they cut their entrances down time-wise. Because in NXT, Nakamura would take like forever to get to the ring to do his thing. And probably management said, that's not going to work on the big shows, especially TV time. So Nakamura just comes down pretty quick. It's probably like a minute or so, his entrance nowadays. Just comes straight down to the ring and then does his little thing. But in NXT, if you watch it, you could see his entrances took a lot longer. And the same goes for Roode. So Nakamura comes out to the ring, and he comes out with a nice new black with red trim coat. I've not seen him use that before, but it looked pretty good. And he comes out with black pants with red trimming on it. So his style, pretty cool. Jinder Mahal comes out with this like light blue type trunks look. And it's good to see that Jinder Mahal adds some color to his ring gear. It's more marketable that way. So they're just having a match, one-on-one match. No special gimmicks in it. And of course, Mahal has the Singh brothers with him to run some interference and do some stuff. And it was just what I would say would have been a nothing special match. I would call it a very standard match in terms of the back and forth, in terms of the sequence of events. And the Singh brothers really didn't interfere too much. In fact, the end was pretty interesting in that the Singh brothers interfere a bit in the match as Nakamura hits the Kinshasa, his knee strike finisher, but the referee wasn't in the spot to make the pin right then. So when he returns into the ring, it's like only a 2 count. So Jinder maybe could have possibly lost because the ref was out of position and the Singh brothers distracted the ref. But other than that, they still worked quite a bit after the match. In other words, the match kept going. Jinder tried to hit his finisher, the Colossus, but Nakamura countered it. And it ends when Nakamura was going for his corner kick, but Jinder moved away, so he hits the turnbuckle. Then Jinder hits the Colossus clean and pins Nakamura clean. I thought it was a pretty clean win by Jinder. The Singh brothers really didn't have any interference spot much that I would say cost him the match or made him win. This is actually the first pay-per-view that I think that Jinder has had when he was champ that he won clean or clean enough in the match, which was a surprise to see and finally good to see. You know, people have said that they don't like Jinder Mahal as champ, but I actually do like the guy as champ because some people will say, oh, he didn't earn it. But you know what? To be the champ and to have a pretty good run, which he's had, it's a unique thing because most wrestlers will never get to be a world champion for the company, much less have a pretty good run as champion. But the only thing I think is they were booking him wrong. And the reason is he's won every match, the title and all the subsequent matches that mattered. He's won it by screwjob finishes by the Singh brothers helping him. And so I think it didn't get the character off in terms of the mainstream audience to appreciate him as champ because of his cheating ways. Now picture this, step back a minute. Let's say Jinder had pinned Orton for the belt clean. And then on the one rematch, he pins Orton again clean. And then he pins, let's say, Cena in one match on TV clean. And he pins Nakamura one match clean at SummerSlam. Wouldn't you think after a guy like that has pinned 3 of your top guys in the company clean, wouldn't you as the general audience kind of respect the guy like, whoa, this guy's a champ? You know, it's like, don't mess with this guy. This guy's something special. But WWE, Vince McMahon have always followed the old game plan that the heel, he can never win clean and almost always has to cheat to win. If you remember, people are forgetting that Seth Rollins, who is now a top star, when he was the world champion, he would win every match with a screw job finish when he was world champion. People forget that. And he also had 2 assistants as well. But now Seth Rollins is considered a top star, and he is in the company. So what I'm saying with Jinder is eventually he'll go solo, which will help him. But had they just gave him clean wins from the beginning, it would have built his character up as someone that the fans or the audience would respect and be kind of like concerned that this guy is a world champion. Watch out for him, you know? But the great thing about it is he has what I consider, and I think just about everyone really should consider, he has the real belt. He is the real world champion with his belt. The Universal Champion was just something made up recently. It has no real legacy. It has no real following. It has no real history. The Brock Lesnar belt, to me, is always a second-string imitation world champ because it doesn't have the legacy behind it. The Jinder belt, the one that AJ Styles also held this belt, this is the belt with the legacy behind it. That's the real world champion. And eventually the belts will be merged. It always happens, but that's not going to happen for quite a number of years. But Jinder is the real champ. And I think Nakamura, I think management, or Vince McMahon I should say, is losing faith in the guy. He was an NXT world champion. Fans are behind him. But I think his portrayal, now that he's on the big stage, I think Nakamura is probably Intercontinental Championship material. But I would be surprised if management has faith in him to make him a world champion. I just don't see it. And his mic skills, I know English is not his native language, but his mic skills, that promo he did on SmackDown before the pay-per-view, it was cringe-worthy. It was not good. As others have mentioned, like on Wrestle Talk, don't let this guy talk. Or make him talk very little. But don't do interviews with him. That's what I'm saying. When you have Nakamura, just make he'll just come out from the side of someone else's interview. He'll say maybe 1 or 2 lines or something. But don't go having a conversation with him back and forth, back and forth. It just, something about it, it doesn't fit his character. You want more of a mystery to him, more of a aura of him being a good striker, and just, I think when SmackDown ruined Nakamura was when they brought him up, because in NXT he was called the King of Strong Style. Only when he appeared on SmackDown did he get the nickname The Artist. That's a downgrade. You keep calling this guy The Artist. It just sounds bad. This is not Art World, people. But he should still be called the King of Strong Style. And SmackDown is not calling him that. And it's just I'm not sure if he's ever going to be World Championship material on the big shows now. So, overall, just a solid match. But I approve of Jinder Mahal winning, because I think this guy has some definite long-term potential, and he looks like a champ just from the physical build. And on to the next match. And the 7th match of the night was Bobby Roode versus Dolph Ziggler. And this is Bobby Roode's first pay-per-view match on SmackDown, now that he's into big brands. He comes out in a white robe with some black highlights and surprisingly white trunks, which you usually don't see him wear, black knee pads, and black boots. And Dolph Ziggler, his entrance was, you hear his music, you see the Titantron, and then they get rid of it. No music, no Titantron, no fireworks, no nothing. And he just walks out to the ring. Which is kind of weird because he was saying he was going to have some grand entrance that he was saying on SmackDown. And then he does the opposite. Nothing special entrance at all. And this was kind of weird because it was sandwiched between the World Champion match and the final match of Shane vs. Kevin Owens. So sandwiched between it was the Bobby Roode versus Dolph Ziggler. I thought this was probably opening match material or second match of the card material. It just kind of seems out of place that they put it here. And so the match was just pretty standard. It felt like a TV match, back and forth, and pretty interesting. You did not see Bobby Roode hit his finisher, the glorious DDT, and you didn't see Dolph Ziggler hit his super kick. So it ends with the back and forth. In the corner starts a roll-up where Ziggler does a roll-up, then Bobby Roode reverses it, Ziggler reverses it, and Bobby Roode reverses it, and holding and hooking the tights. He gets the 1, 2, 3, referee wasn't looking, he raises his hands up, and immediately after Ziggler hits him with the zigzag, his finisher, after the match was over. And so you could tell that, and the way Ziggler looks at him at the end, you could tell that this feud is not over. That this is just beginning, and probably maybe a 2 or 3 month feud between these two characters. I think it felt like, again, opening type of card match material. Definitely not the best work of either wrestler, and it's just the beginning, it felt like, feud-wise. So again, I would call it a standard match, kind of disappointing, but as I'd mentioned with Nakamura, Bobby Roode, his entrances in NXT would take forever, to finally start the match. He comes out pretty quick in a minute or so, does his thing, and then he's ready to wrestle. The entrance got cut down. And he didn't have any special entrance, like with some type of orchestra or something special. I'm pretty sure, hopefully, when it comes to the big 4 pay-per-views, or when it comes to a real big feud, they'll have a special entrance here or there. Because fantastic music for his character. And he's definitely over with the fans. He's hopefully Bobby Roode, if management gets behind him. I said Nakamura might not be a world champion in terms of the big brands, but I really think Bobby Roode is definitely going to be a world champion one day in the company for either belt, the Universal or the real legacy belt of the WWE Championship. He'll have either one in the future. Hopefully the legacy belt, the WWE Championship, not the Universal one. We'll see what happens for Roode, but he's definitely, apparently, a good company man, and we'll see what happens. And before I get to the main event, I would like to say, I think it's time that Sanity and Eric Young, that this team gets moved to the big brands. They would be so over, and will be so over when they move him to the big brands. And Eric Young and his whole Sanity team, it's a great gimmick, and I think by now they should consider moving them up. And now for the main event, the 8th match of the night. Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens in a Hell in the Cell match. And this is the second time that they've used Hell in the Cell during this card. And all I could say is, on my end, on the East Coast, the pay-per-view officially started 8 p.m., but 7 p.m. was the pre-show, the 1 hour pre-show. So the card starts 8 p.m., and usually you expect it to end about a little before 11 o'clock p.m. Some would say even like 10:40 or 10:50 is usually when it would end, right? And don't forget, people on a Sunday have to prepare for work on a Monday, right? And if you have children or kids are watching, you expect it to end a little before 11 o'clock, and it's late for them. But this pay-per-view ended almost 11:30. The match started about 10:50 p.m., and it went on to about like 11:25 or close to it p.m. Way longer. I thought it would have ended 11 o'clock, and it was not advertised that I know of to be an 11:30 ending event. And you have to give credit, Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens, on this Hell in a Cell. I have not seen a Hell in a Cell match this good or like this in a long time. All I could say, it was the best match of the night. Second best match of the night, I would say, overall, was the Usos versus the New Day. But this was the best match of the night. A show stealer, high-end, 5-star match. It was crazy, people. They first start out this match, and what's kind of odd is you didn't see any Vince McMahon appearance or Stephanie. You would think with Vince McMahon getting beat up, there would have been like some payoff or some back and forth. And you see Shane McMahon, his kids, in the front row. So this starts in the Hell in the Cell, right? And all I could say is some intense back and forth fighting. And again, this match you thought would be a 10 or 15 minute match. It goes almost 30 minutes. I mean, wow. So one incredible spot was Kevin Owens brings out a table in the corner. He leans it against the corner of the cage. Shane is leaned on the table, and Kevin Owens is going to jump off of the ringside, and he's going to jump and do his cannonball flip. Shane McMahon ducks away, and Kevin Owens flips through the table. Oh man, hurt your back. Ouch. And McMahon, it reminds me of the old WWF Superstars arcade game, when a wrestler, you could break a table over him, you had half a table end and you would hit your opponent with it. Well, Shane McMahon gets the half of a table end and starts whacking Kevin Owens on the back with it. And I thought, just like the video game, it was awesome. And so, again, there's some back and forth, there's some chairs. But this is when things really heated up, okay? Kevin Owens hits his frog splash as well. That is really becoming a powerful move in Kevin Owens' arsenal, the frog splash. But doesn't get the pin. What's really cool is, in the last few Hell in the Cells, we want to see outside the ring action. And I should have mentioned this earlier in the review. But before the match starts and Kevin Owens is coming down the ramp, Shane McMahon leaves the ring and starts beating the crap out of him, and they do back and forth outside of the Hell in the Cell fighting. I like that. I like that mindset and doing something like that, because we have not seen that in a while. So eventually they brought it into the ring and the match started. Okay, I should have mentioned that. Here's where it gets unique, because the cell is locked. Shane McMahon is like, open the cell. And the referee goes, no, because you want to see the bust out action, right? He gets bolt cutters, breaks the lock, and escapes the cell. And then Kevin Owens escapes the cell, and they're fighting. But just like the 2K video games, they both climb the Hell in the Cell to the very top. And this was the unusual thing. Okay, on the setup I should mention, there was a table, the announcer table. Kevin Owens set up Shane McMahon on the table. And I thought, as everyone thought, because he was hesitant, that he was going to either do a frog splash or a senton when he jumps and uses his back from the top of the cell onto Shane McMahon on the table. I thought for sure, everyone thought about it. But here's the crazy thing. On the senton, you can't judge your direction or how your body is going to fall. So you might hit the edge of the table, you might not hit it, you don't know what's going on because you cannot see it. That's a very risky move. And a frog splash at that height might probably break Shane McMahon, break some of his bones. And if he misses it, it's just going to hurt either option. I thought from the setup he could have done either move, but that the frog splash would have been the safer move, because at least you could see where you're going. But, so he's hesitant, he stays on the cage, right? He doesn't do the spot. Shane McMahon climbs up after him, and he's hanging from the top of the cage railing, trying to get up. And I thought surely, as everyone thought, Kevin Owens was going to kick him, and then he was going to fall and hit through the table. But no, Shane McMahon holds him off, and they both reach the top of the cage, and this was the weirdest part of the night, and also the most awesome part of the night. You would think that two people on the top of the cage would probably be there like a minute or two, right? They must have stayed 10 minutes or maybe more, give or take, fighting on the top of the cage, and it was awesome. He did a pump-up power bomb to Shane McMahon on the top of the Hell in the Cell. And the weird thing is, the cage gives way. It flops up and down. It's not solid. Shane McMahon did a suplex to Kevin Owens on the top of the Hell in the Cell, with their bodies crashing down. And I think Shane McMahon hit his head on the crossbars, the two sections between the cages, the solid part of the metal that lines up the two pieces together. I think he hit his head twice on some of those spots, on that cross beam on the top of the cage. They did suplexes, they did the pump-up powerbomb, they did clotheslines. I thought the top of the cell was going to break. Or did they want it to break? Was it planned? Did they have a trap door? Anything could go wrong when you're on a spot like that. However, it's reinforced. Those things will break, if you catch what I'm saying. But they must have had super extra reinforcement, and give it credit to the designers of it. It did not break. They stayed there about 10 minutes, give or take, back and forth, epic trauma. At one point, I thought Kevin Owens was going to like powerbomb him off the top of the cell because they were getting near the edge, and it got reversed. And at one point, it looked like Kevin Owens was just going to pick Shane up by the pants and throw him right off the cage, flush. But Shane escaped it. It ends in a very unique way. Kevin Owens is climbing down the cage, but his hands are on the top. So his body is like halfway down the cage, and his hands are holding the top, and Shane climbs down after him, and eventually knocks Kevin Owens, who goes through the table. Boom. Back first. But this spot was kind of safer because, if you notice it, the guy has climbed halfway down the cage. His hands are on top of him. He's kind of climbed halfway down the section of the cage. It was still a terrific spot. And he falls through, breaks the table. Shane McMahon should have pinned him right there. Let's face it. He would have won the match, right? It doesn't end that way. You know, all help there is, medical help is there. Shane McMahon puts Kevin Owens on another table, cleans out the table, clears it, puts him on a table, climbs the very top of the Hell in the Cell. And he's going to do his elbow drop dive. And OMG, he jumps flush off the top of the cage with the elbow leaning down and his arm leaning down. Kevin Owens rolls off the table. Shane busts through the table, and oh my, exploding the table. Everyone freaking out. But here is the little what if, because you didn't see it in the beginning. You did not see this until you looked closer. And on the replay, someone pulled Kevin Owens off the table before the elbow drop. And who was it? Sami Zayn. That's right, he was wearing a sweater with a hood. Sami Zayn pulled his rival, Kevin Owens, off the table. And then, because Kevin Owens is not moving from his previous bump, Shane is on the floor and needs medical help. Sami Zayn drags Kevin Owens, pushes away. The funny spot of the night was there was this heavy medical personnel guy, clearly not a wrestler and clearly much older, and Sami Zayn shoves him away. It was really funny to see that. He drags Kevin Owens over to get the 1, 2, 3 and tells the referee, count it. And so it ends like that. They have to stretcher out Shane. Kevin Owens is freaking knocked out, really doesn't know what's going on. And Sami Zayn is the one surprising heel turn. Is he reuniting with his buddy, his rival, Kevin Owens? It seems so. So it was definite surprising ending. I thought the first table hit would have been the end of the match, but to get a second one, and they were fighting on top of the Hell in a Cell so long, and Sami Zayn, who has not had a good career boost in a long time, this could be the career boost turning heel that he needs to possibly be a world champion one day, but is not in the world championship picture yet. Surprise end, fantastic main event, hard work by both. And here's the weirdest thing in conclusion of this video. I thought it was a pretty good event. I call it a pay-per-view even though they call it a live event or whatever the heck it is. I'm an old school fan. I'm going to call these things pay-per-views because that's what they are, okay? It was a good event overall. 2 solid matches, maybe 3. And there was no world title change, and I was cool with that. You had some stuff with Randy Orton. Where are they going with him? I think they should move him to the other brand. Tye Dillinger has some potential. It's good AJ Styles doesn't have the U.S. belt because maybe they can move him up to the World Championship material belt. And he deserves another run to be a world champion. Get him in that picture. I'm not sure at this point if the Nakamura feud is going to move on to someone else. I'm not sure at the end of this where Jinder goes, who his next opponent is, or Nakamura. Hopefully the feud is done. It really should be at this point. And the Shane McMahon vs. Kevin Owens was Incredible matchup. Why does Shane McMahon always lose the match when his kids are in the front row? It's happened again. Such hard work. And, you know, it kind of makes half the roster of WWE look bad when the son of the boss is a more entertaining personality and worker than half or more of the entire roster. And he's not even what you would call a real wrestler, maybe, because he's not someone who works regularly. It's something rare. And don't forget, he's only worked a few matches since he's come back, and he's older. And even at his age, he is still doing a better job than half the entire roster does, and all the younger people. Kind of weird. But you gotta give it up. Respect, totally. Solid stuff. Well done. And good event. You know, I just thought the only negative was it went on a half hour too long. It really should have been 8 to 11. I think they could have timed it better. I think some of the matches, maybe the New Day ran on a little too long time-wise. And maybe they should have made time-wise shorter another match. But solid work. If you like this video and want to see more of these pay-per-view type of review events, let me know. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications. And talk to you later.